Okay, gang, let's talk about the FISA. Judicial Watch, a guy named Tom Fitton, issued a statement this past week, and documents they received via a Freedom of Information Act request. This is commonly called a FOIA request. What's up, Rex? They determined that the FISA court, which is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISC, the court that issues the FISA warrant that you may or may not have heard people talk about. You've likely heard me talk about it if you listen to these. The FISA court held no hearings on the warrant to surveil the Trump campaign. They authorized the spying on Carter Page and the Trump campaign in 2016. I believe it was in July. And this FISA warrant was renewed 3 times. So there were 4 signatories on this FISA, and the declassification of all of the documentation that Congress has been asking for is basically going to serve as a notification for these signatories that they're under investigation. This declass is likely to initiate the resignation of Rod Rosenstein, the attorney who's overseeing the special counsel investigation and who oversaw the application and subsequent renewals of this FISA. So what happened with this FISA? This is a secret court that authorizes the surveillance of U.S. citizens. So a private citizen can be spied on without them even knowing about it. We can use it to spy on foreign agents, domestic agents. We can spy on spies. We can spy on spies who are spying on spies. Whatever we choose to do with this. This is an unaccountable extrajudicial court. So the DNC and Hilllary Clinton paid a law firm and a opposition research firm, Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS. Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS then hired a foreign intelligence agent, Christopher Steele, who worked for MI6, British intelligence. Christopher Steele had also done contract work for the FBI in the past, so you can consider Christopher Steele an FBI agent as well. These law firms paid Christopher Steele to find evidence linking Donald Trump to the Russian government. Christopher Steele shops around various anonymous sources, pays these anonymous sources, and gets information from these anonymous sources in Russia to compile the dossier, the infamous dossier. What's up, Drew? This dossier that was, through a roundabout way, paid for by the DNC and Hillary Clinton, makes its way back through Christopher Steele, through Fusion GPS and Perkins Coie, back to the DNC. The DNC gets this dossier into the hands of John McCain. These law firms and Christopher Steele also give the information that's contained in this dossier to a number of U.S. media outlets. These media outlets time their release of stories related to the content of the dossier consistent with requests from Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS. John McCain takes that dossier to the FBI. That FBI is then led by James Comey, Andrew McCabe. The FBI takes that dossier and they go to the FISA court to obtain a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. This dossier, among other things, contains the story that you may have heard in the news, where Donald Trump paid hookers to urinate on a bed that had been slept in by Barack Obama. Some kind of petty bullshit to paint the president in a, what I would consider, hilariously disparaging light. This, to use James Comey, then director of the FBI, this, quote, salacious and unverified document, end quote, was used to obtain a surveillance warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. The additional evidence used to substantiate that dossier was, you guessed it, the news stories that were run using the information from the dossier. So this dossier that had been paid for by a presidential candidate and their campaign committee, the Democratic National Committee, the DNC and Hilllary Clinton paid a foreign spy to compile opposition research against Donald Trump. That opposition research, the dossier, was used by the FBI to obtain a surveillance warrant to spy on Donald Trump during the campaign for the 2016 election. News stories that contained leaked information from the FBI and Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele for the FBI was used to substantiate the dossier. So these stories were used as corroborating evidence to support the validity of that dossier. Also, they did not notify the FISA judge as to who paid for the dossier and whether the sources of the information in the dossier, these anonymous Russian sources, whether they were paid. So, the money flows out, the story comes back. The story splits. It's leaked to media organizations and passed along to John McCain. Then it's passed through the FBI to the FISA court. The two substantiate one another, and the FISA court grants a surveillance warrant to spy on a presidential candidate. This is the weaponization of the FISA process and of the FBI. So if you want to talk about foreign collusion, foreign interference in the election, there it is, folks. There it is. This is domestic election interference. This is foreign domestic interference. And it originated in one of the primary, what would you call it, political parties in the United States. The Democrats paid for a foreign intelligence asset to interfere in the 2016 election by spying on a presidential candidate, Donald Trump. This is what they've been screaming about the whole time. I've talked before about projection. What projection is, I have an inadequacy. Let's say I'm a liar. I'm more likely to accuse people of being liars. Accuse your enemy of what you yourself have done. This is a Saul Alinsky tactic that's laid out in a book called Rules for Radicals. This is the Democrat Party playbook. If you want to know what they're going to do and why they're doing it, read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Projection. This is basic psychology. I'm going to project my own inadequacies, my own flaws, my own faults onto others. It's called projection. It's basic psychology, and it's something we all do. This narrative, Russian collusion, foreign collusion, election interference, corruption, collusion, corruption, this news cycle, this is projection. This is the Democratic Party and its substituents in Hollywood, in government, in banking, in Wall Street, in foreign governments. This apparatus is projecting its own guilt onto a president, a sitting U.S. president. And they've gotten us to defend the very corruption we claim to oppose. That's what the president is talking about when he talks about FISA abuse. That's why I've been so vocal about what's in this FISA. Why are these congressional investigators wanting information related to this FISA? Why should the president declassify all of these documents related to the FISA? Because we want transparency. We want to know what actually happened so that we don't have to rely on this mockingbird media apparatus to tell us what to think. We can go straight to the facts and decide what the facts say. An informed opinion. Judicial Watch's statement. This FISA warrant was based only on written submissions, i.e., the dossier from MI6's Christopher Steele that had been paid for by the Clinton Foundation and the DNC. Comey, the FBI director, had labeled this evidence publicly as salacious and unverified. Judicial Watch's statement reads, "The Clinton campaign, the DNC, a conflicted Bruce Orr, a compromised Christopher Steele, and a now fired FBI agent in charge, Peter Strzok, conspired to interfere in the 2016 election by spying on Donald Trump and his campaign team. This is foreign interference in the election, folks. The Russian collusion, the UK collusion, the election rigging, and the campaign malfeasance all occurred. Foreign interference did occur in the 2016 election. It occurred by and to the benefit of Hillary Clinton and the DNC. So, Jeff Sessions has appointed a special prosecutor named John Huber from Utah. This guy is from outside the DNC, DC, politically oriented swamp in Washington, D.C. He has jurisdiction in all 50 states, can issue subpoenas, issue indictments in all 50 states, and get to the bottom of what happened here. His charge is to investigate the mishandling of Hillary Clinton's email investigation and the opening of the investigation into foreign election interference in 2016. Let's talk about Hillary's email investigation. Pretty much everyone who was involved in this investigation has been fired, demoted, or removed from the investigation, or removed from their position of power within the FBI, DOJ, CIA. All of these corrupt individuals have been wiped out. Fact check me, please. I've posted memes about it. I've posted lists, and I think I did a previous YouTube video about it. If you just look up FISA or some variant thereof. I don't have many videos. It should be easy to find. The email investigation, which again was run by corrupt actors who have since been fired, and rightfully so. The charges considered for Hillary Clinton and her aides: willful mishandling of documents or information related to the national defense, removal, loss, theft, abstraction, destruction of documents or information relating to the national defense through gross negligence or failure to report such removal, such as loss, theft, abstraction, or destruction. So that second bullet point there, gross negligence. We've already seen, and this is public information, open sourced information, the wording in the public statement issued by James Comey was changed by Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok from grossly negligent to extremely careless. That takes these infractions, these crimes, from a felony to a don't do that anymore, Hillary. Next, unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or material by government employees. Third, or fourth, I suppose, concealment, removal, or mutilation of government records. So this is like a checklist of what Hillary Clinton and her aides did in 2016. After being served a subpoena for all communications from this private email server, on which she communicated secret, top secret, compartmentalized, and special access program information in and out. Barack Obama communicated with Hillary Clinton knowingly from a private email address on a private email server to another private email address. So doing government business, State Department business, knowingly, willfully mishandling documents which is a felony. These are felonies, folks. The key players involved avoided calling the email investigation an investigation. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, having met with Bill Clinton in private less than a month prior, instructed former FBI Director James Comey to refer to the investigation as a, quote, matter. This was consistent with messaging from the Clinton campaign. So if you've read these WikiLeaks emails, you can see the strategy for leaking information to the media and the communication they were having with journalists. There's a who's who list of journalists who colluded with the Clinton campaign in the presidential election. They were sending stories to the Clinton team, and the Clinton team was editing and sending those stories back before they were published. So they got to dictate the news and the narrative surrounding their campaign. So John Podesta and the team were calling for the Clinton email investigation to be referred to as a matter, and it just so happens that Loretta Lynch directed the DOJ and FBI to refer to that investigation as a matter rather than an investigation. It's a bad look for you to be under FBI investigation as a presidential candidate. Despite what James Comey described as a knot in his stomach at having to do this, which he didn't have to do, he did a dishonorable thing here. He complied, referred to it as a matter, and reported that it was not gross negligence, but extremely careless behavior. Randall Coleman, former assistant director of the Counterintelligence Division, stated, "I don't know why that was the case, why it was unsub. I'm really shocked that it would have stayed that way, because certainly this was an investigation, and it really had started to get more focused." Randall Coleman, shortly after issuing this statement, was removed from the investigation and replaced by Bill Priestap. Bill Priestap expressed concerns that the FBI needed to more fully explain why the FBI can, in charges for someone who committed a crime, say that no crimes were committed. I laid out what the law is. Those first 4 bullet points I gave you, those are felonies. Violation of those with security clearance is felony. Bill Priestap expressed concerns on why the FBI was able to say that no charges had been committed when charges had clearly been committed. He says, "I believe it's equally important for the director to more fully explain why the FBI can, in good faith, recommend to the DOJ that they not charge someone who has committed a crime." Prosecutors 1 and 2, both of whom were assigned to the investigation in late July 2015, understood that it was a criminal act and a criminal investigation from very, very early in the investigation. Prosecutor 1 told us, quote, "I mean, pretty quickly this seemed like a criminal investigation. It looked and smelled like a criminal investigation to me," end quote. Prosecutors 1 and 2, you might have guessed by now, removed from the investigation. Barack Hussein Obama, among 12 other government officials, communicated classified information on Hillary's private email server. The FBI concluded that hostile actors had accessed this information, and this came out in recent news. Every one of Hillary's emails coming out of that private email server, to include the 33,000 emails that she deleted, because of malware that had been installed on that private server remotely by Chinese hackers, every email she sent or received, a copy of that email was automatically forwarded to Chinese hackers. Dianne Feinstein, we find out, has had a Chinese spy employed for her for 20 years. Imran Awan, employed by Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the DNC, a Pakistani, what appears to be spy, was given access to more than 30 members of Congress's emails, their cell phones, their laptops, all of their digital communications. This is concerning, folks, because if this stuff was unintentional, that's one thing. These people can just go to jail, right? For willful mishandling of documents and for not giving Imran Awan a background check. Why would this Pakistani national be given access to all these computers without a background check? Why would he and his family be given no-show jobs with six-figure salaries? Why would this guy later try to leave the country and be apprehended by the FBI in Texas? Why would he, before trying to leave the country, wire $100,000 to his wife in Pakistan? Is any of this stuff suspicious to you? It's suspicious to me. So Clinton also communicated with Barack Obama on this private email server and on unsecured electronic devices, her BlackBerry, while she was in hostile territory. So during her duties as Secretary of State, she had to travel to foreign nations that were hostile territory at the time, and still are. She was communicating directly with the president on an unsecured device through an unsecured private email server that would avoid Freedom of Information Act requests, because it doesn't go through the Department of Defense, doesn't go through State Department, doesn't go through .gov email servers. This is all out in the ether. And everything I'm saying now is verified, factual information. Peter Strzok, in reference to foreign actors having access to these electronic devices and to her email server and the communication on these devices. It's more accurate to say we know foreign actors obtained access to some of her emails. Obama's name in the reports given to us by, I believe it was Rod Rosenstein did the redactions on these, or people within his subcommittees and departments. Obama's name was changed to, quote, senior government official, end quote, in these reports. So you have a team of biased investigators looking into Hillary's emails. It's likely that very early on they find out that not only was Hillary Clinton communicating classified information on a private email server, but it goes all the way up to the president. Barack Obama is communicating classified information on a private email server. So they are both committing felonies. You find this out early on. You find out that you can take felony action against the president and the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is now a presidential candidate in an upcoming election. This would almost certainly guarantee the election for Donald Trump or ruin the DNC, because they had already betrayed Bernie Sanders in the election. Go and read these WikiLeaks. The DNC actively colluded against Bernie Sanders to give Hillary Clinton the nomination, despite overwhelming support for Bernie Sanders. Unfortunate, but it's true. If you contributed money to Bernie Sanders' campaign, you contributed money to Hillary Clinton directly, because it was known well in advance that Bernie Sanders was never going to be the nominee. It could have been hope against hope. Instead, it was hope against establishment. They had planned and had already coordinated with various media outlets and journalists that were friendly to the DNC and Hillary Clinton to plant questions to bring up Bernie Sanders' faith or lack thereof. They wanted to talk about his Jewish heritage to distance him from Episcopalians, and they wanted to talk about his atheism to further distance him from any of the religious base in the Democratic Party. This would allow them to have more justification to do what they had already planned on doing, which is giving Hillary Clinton the nomination. It didn't matter who there was support for. They had already chosen who your candidate was going to be, Democrats. Sorry. It's all in the emails. This is all open source information. If you've never been on WikiLeaks, I would encourage you to try it out, and I would encourage you to support that organization. So they've been running this Russian hacking narrative from the very beginning with zero evidence. Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, has said no government agency provided any information contained in these documents. Our source was an insider. I have my own suspicions about who that insider was. You can draw your own conclusions. The opening and closing of Hillary's email investigation was suspect for a multitude of reasons. The usurpation of Bernie Sanders to put Hilllary Clinton in the nominee spot was suspect for a multitude of reasons. The FISA authorization with no hearing and no factual information to support the evidence that was presented to spy on the Trump campaign was suspect for a multitude of reasons. John Huber is investigating these matters. Jeff Sessions appointed a special prosecutor from outside D.C. to look into these things. The opening and closing of the email investigation and the opening of the Russian collusion investigation, Russian interference in the 2016 election. Watch what Jeff Sessions does. Watch what the FBI does, watch what the CIA does, and watch what the NSA is doing. And watch what these individuals around the president are doing. Over the next few months, things are about to get silly, and I would encourage you to pay attention. This video will be up on YouTube, I'd say tomorrow or maybe the next day, I'm not really sure. We'll see you, folks.